A pilot in the right scenario is a sales superpower, and it'll help you close incredible customers. But when you do it poorly, it can be a major blocker in getting the deal done. So this week, we'll be covering, should you add a pilot to your sales process? You've already built an incredible product as the founder or part of the founding team. So how do you think about whether or not to provide a pilot to your customers? Well, this is our top asked question for this past week. So we'll be diving right on into more tactics for you to consider in this process. Hi, everyone. My name is Shuo Chen. I am a former founder, now investing in founders and teaching founders at Berkeley and Stanford. I'm also a board member here at Decode, the largest tech and entrepreneurship community co-hosted between Berkeley and Stanford. And I'm excited to share with you more about whether or not to add a pilot in your sales process. In this week's topic, we'll be covering the top 3 tactics for considering sales pilots. So without further ado, let's dive on right in. First tactic for this week is you want to ensure that for any pilots you might consider, you want to clear objections fast. You might think that adding in a pilot is to help close a customer, but actually step 1 is just to make sure that you're getting rid of objections. You want to directly ask your buyer, what's holding you back? You want to get to very specifics about objections they might have, concerns they might have, or any hesitations they might have. It could be lack of trust. It could be like, hey, honestly, between you and I, could you just tell me if you're worried about whether or not we as a startup are still going to be around in a few months? Is it because we haven't worked with enough large logos and so you're a bit concerned whether or not this is the right fit? Or it could be not necessarily lack of trust. It could be that your customer is worried about integration. You want to make sure to really understand the honest reason why your buyer is held back. Then you want to define the goal of the pilot very clearly, whether it's for technical validation, whether it's for user adoption, for change management, or whether or not there is a fit around the specific use case. Whatever it is, you want to define the goal of this pilot very clearly. Then you want to design pilots to make sure that it eliminates the specific objections and meets the goals that we just defined. So if it somehow doesn't meet the specific objections, eliminate the objections, nor meet the goals that were defined, then a pilot would be a waste of time and resources, and you don't want to consider a pilot at all. But if you feel like this pilot would help people build more trust, be less worried about integration, it would eliminate all the objections that they have in place and meet your goals for success, like test for technical validation, make sure that users are adopting this process, for example, and there is a good fit for the use case, then this is when you want to definitely move forward with a pilot. So you want to set very concrete success metrics so that you can enable a full rollout post the pilot. So your success metric could be, I want to see by the end of this pilot a 20% reduction in the amount of time that's required to complete this task. Or by the end of this process, I will help every single team member who uses my product a 40% increase in sales. So once you have these success metrics in place by the end of the pilot, you could say, look, we've more than achieved these metrics. We've doubled it. We've hit it out of the ballpark. And so we want to now move past the pilot and do a full-on rollout and sign a proper enterprise deal. And of course, you want to match the length of your pilot based on time to value. You want this to be long enough for the buyer to experience the benefit, the impact that your incredible product brings, but you also want the pilot to be short enough to drive urgency so that the buyer has a lot of incentive to buy right away because they just experienced the value. So all of this is around tactic 1, which is ensuring to design pilots to clear objections fast and to meet the objectives that you've defined. And that leads us into tactic number 2, which is that you want to set clear prerequisites before starting a pilot. You want to require, or at least have, a very clear internal champion. This is someone who is committed to using the product X number of hours a week, and if it's successful, who will advocate it for you internally. They are ideally someone who is really well connected within the company so they can message all the people in their network and rally the right kind of internal support to make sure that they buy if this pilot is successful. You want to confirm that there's alignment on the scope of the pilot as well and just the criteria of success so that you can make sure that engineering resources are pre-allocated for any sort of integration work or implementation that may be necessary. In this process, you want to verify that the budget is approved as well for the post-pilot package being tested, because it would be a shame if you ran this pilot, but you don't necessarily have budget for the full rollout afterwards. So just make sure that budget is in place. And of course, you want to confirm that the decision maker is aware of the pilot and they're comfortable with the decision timeline. A pilot is essentially giving your customer more time to make that final decision. So you want to make sure that the final decision maker, or plural, decision makers, they are aware that by the end of this pilot for X weeks or X months, they will be making that final decision. And you want to make all of these confirmations very explicit. Don't make an assumption. Make sure that you don't start the pilot until every single box is checked and all of these prerequisites are met. So all of this around tactic 2 is just setting very clear prerequisites before starting a pilot so that everyone is going into this with very clear expectations. And that leads us directly into tactic 3, which is making sure to run a structured pilot with built-in checkpoints. You want to generally have a very structured process for how you run a pilot. You want to schedule calls for kickoff, for support, for check-in, and for the final decision. So you want to start with a kickoff call to align on the structure of the pilot, success metrics and criteria, as well as any sort of required prerequisites, which we talked about in earlier tactics. You want to schedule then a support call to just set up the real use cases, unblock any sort of setup issues, address any questions on the specific workflow of the product. It could be things like configuring a test flow or an integration live so you can show your users exactly how to use your product. So this is a support call. And then you want to hold a check-in call to make sure that you're measuring progress against your success metrics. Are things going well? Are you close to hitting your success metrics? In this process, you're addressing any other objections that might have come up, addressing any technical difficulties, discussing the scope and pricing and follow-ups to make sure that you're not only delivering the value on your success metrics, but you're also pushing the conversation forward on the scope and potential pricing in the end. Lastly, you want to end with a decision call that directly ties your pilot results to the success criteria so that you push for a final decision. It's a very clear go or no go, and you want to propose very clear next steps. So this is how you structure a successful pilot. You want to have kickoff, support, check-in, and final decision. And of course, in order to run this process in a very time-efficient way, you need to put all of these meetings on the calendar upfront to avoid going dark or losing momentum after the kickoff. So that is all around tactic number 3, which is how to run a structured pilot with built-in checkpoints. So to recap today, we've covered the top 3 tactics for how to consider whether or not you should add a pilot in the sales process. And if you are adding a sales pilot, these 3 tactics are going to be incredibly useful for you to structure and run these pilots effectively. So again, the 3 tactics were: 1, ensuring that pilots help you clear objections and reach goals; 2, setting clear prerequisites before you even get into a pilot; and 3, running a structured pilot with these built-in checkpoints. With that, if you want to learn more about other traps to avoid in this process, as well as tools that you can leverage, please feel free to check out the link below to read the full-on newsletter that we have and subscribe to our weekly newsletter. With that said, if you have any other topics or questions that you want us to cover in a future week, please feel free to comment below or reach out to us via email or LinkedIn. And otherwise, please like and share this video with other fellow founders in the community. Thank you so much for tuning in. And again, we'll see you next week. Take care.